Okay, my friends, here it is, the video that is going to explain to you how to determine when to plant your cover crops and then how to plant them. So you've watched the last video that I've made about how to determine if a cover crop is right for me and my home garden setup, because it's not right for everyone in every situation. But this video is if you have determined, yes, I want to plant the cover crop. Now, when do I do it and how? I'm going to explain that in this video, and then I'm going to take you through briefly a year's worth of footage of the cover crop so that you can have a more complete understanding of what you're getting into and of what the process is. So, to understand when to plant the cover crop, you must first understand what is the natural cycle of that type of plant. And so I advocate the use of essentially just two simple cover crops. It is the winter rye or winter wheat, we'll treat them the same, and it is a clover. So if you're in zone 6 and above, it's going to be crimson clover. If you're in zone 5 and below, it's going to be mammoth red clover. And winter rye is the best for all of the above, okay? Because the winter rye is hardy down to negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit. And I will show you a picture of what I'm talking about. So the plants that we choose for cover crops they have a different cycle than other plants such as tomatoes and peppers and cucumbers and all of this. So the tomatoes, it will sprout once the temperature gets warm and the last frost has passed, and it will grow all summer long during the hot months. And then as soon as the frost comes, it will kill the plant and everything will drop to the ground. And then those seeds will remain dormant until the conditions are right the following year. When the heat comes back and the soil warms up, it will sprout again and it will grow all summer and then die at the first frost. Now, those kind of plants, which is the vast majority of annuals, they will overwinter as a seed, okay? But the plants, the winter rye and the crimson clover or the red clover, the plants we choose for cover crops, they overwinter as a plant. They die and set seed in the middle of the growing season. So it will begin to flower very early summer, and it will set seed midsummer and die back, so that late summer the seeds will begin to grow and there will be a certain amount of growth. And then once the heavy frosts come, then the plant will go dormant over winter until the very, very early spring, almost late winter, when the conditions are right, the plant will start vigorous growth again. Now, it does this because it has less competition. The intelligence of the plant understands that, okay, well, if we utilize the killing frost to our advantage, we will have an advantage over the other plants because we can grow in the very early spring before any other plants have sprouted, and we can utilize all the sunlight and nutrition that we need. So it's clever. So for that reason, once we observe the natural cycle, the growth habit patterns of that plant, we will know that the ideal time to plant the clovers or the winter rye or winter wheat is now, in late summer. So the crimson clover especially, you want to plant that about 3 to 4 weeks before your first frost, at least. Okay, same with the mammoth clover, 2 to 3 weeks before your first frost is best, to give it some time to sprout up and to grow just a little bit before it goes dormant. Now the winter rye, that will sprout even when it gets very cold. So you can even after your last frost date, you can plant winter rye if you need to. But here's 2 ways to use the cover crops. One way is if you do not have anything in the ground and you know that, yes, I want to plant a cover crop in this plot to be building soil all winter long for my heat-loving stuff next year. Now, in that case, you are going to get a mixture, a 50 to 50, a half and half mixture of the appropriate type of clover, either crimson or mammoth red, depending on where you live, and then the winter rye or the winter wheat, whatever you want. A 50-50 mixture, spread it out, broadcast it onto that area. And you broadcast it, pretty heavily. I can't give an exact ratio, but just pretty heavily, not quite as heavy as like grass seed. And then you simply let it go. You can work it into the surface a little bit if you want with a rake, but it's not necessary. Those seeds are designed to be able to sprout in just on top of the soil. So just water it in, but make sure they don't get buried more than 1/4 of an inch, all right? And then you just let that grow. Now, the other way to do it is if you have stuff in the ground. Now, that can be done in one of two ways. In one way is if you have really good healthy stuff, cabbages and peas that you want to harvest. So then you have to wait until that stuff is pretty much done. But you can wait until, okay, so if I know I'm gonna harvest my cabbage in about 1 week from now, I'm gonna go ahead and broadcast the 50-50 mixture of clover and rye in the bed. And then by the time that sprouts, I'm gonna be harvesting my cabbage. Do you see how we're getting a jump start on it? So even if you have stuff in the ground, you can still broadcast it underneath the leaves and all that stuff and give it that week or whatever, or 10 days to sprout up before you harvest the stuff. Yes? The other way is if you have stuff and you're just nursing it along that's growing, maybe they've caught diseases, your tomatoes by this point are all got the late blight going on and all that. Just mow them down. Mow them down, plant the cover crop. You're gonna be a lot better off next year for doing that. Okay, so that's the way you utilize that stuff, and the time is now. The cover crops are very forgiving, so basically just get the mixture 50-50 and put it in the ground. And I will put links in the description to the exact stuff that I get. So if you use those links, I would appreciate it, because that just gives me a small kickback. But also, get them wherever you want, but that's where I get mine. So now I'm going to show you a full year's life cycle. Okay, so here we are last year in the garden, about October 3rd, and this is 2 weeks before the first frost comes. And I'm just explaining how to broadcast the cover crop seed. I use a mixture of winter rye and crimson clover. Now here in the plot that I'm pointing to, this had been broadcasted about 10 days previous, so the last week of September. And as you can see, I have a lot of other things that are in the garden, so not all of the plots are going to have a cover crop because there's a lot still going on. Now here we are, November 24th, about 5 weeks after the first frost came, and you can see it has grown still considerably more. There's a little bit of the clover in there. And then here we are, February 2nd, and this is how it remains dormant all winter long. And here we are getting a snow, but it's not going to phase this winter rye. All right, so the winter rye can protect the soil and nourish the microorganisms all the way down to 40 below zero. So here we are on February 26th. There's been snow on the ground for a long time. The winter rye is totally unfazed, and it has been building soil this entire time. It has been doing its thing until here we are on the 14th of April, which is 1 month before the last frost. And you can see that the winter rye has started growing again. And so is the garlic, but the winter rye has really taken hold, and it is building soil to a maximum degree. Here we are at April 30th. It's about 1.5 feet, 2 feet tall, really vibrantly growing. I probably seeded this a little bit too heavy because it didn't need to be that heavy, but I tend to go overboard. So here we are now on May 11th, and I'm using this very sophisticated technique to mow it down. And I'll show you guys all kinds of different methods for terminating them. But this one was the one I chose. So I mowed it all down with the weed whacker or the sickle, and then you mow it up with the lawnmower so that you've got this nice, rich, organic matter that is going to decompose on the garden plot. And that's what you want. So to make sure everything stays there, I put some of this landscaping fabric over it. And that is going to help to contain everything as it decomposes. The worms can digest it underneath, and this is going to keep all the nutrients in the area that we want it. And so here you go. This is pretty much of how you would use a cover crop from fall to spring. So that's pretty much it, my friends. If you feel like you gained something from the video, give it a thumbs up and leave a comment, the first thing that comes to mind. And also, if you want to grow the mushrooms along with the channel this winter, then use the link in the description to go to North Spore, the mushroom company, and use the promo code Garden Viking, and you will get 10% off, and that helps me out as well. And we're going to first be utilizing the spray and grow kit of the lion's mane, and then the yellow oyster spawn bag. And I'm going to show you guys how to be growing mushrooms indoors. We're also doing microgreens, link in the description to where I get the seeds from. You want to be getting those seeds as well, so that you got everything ready for the indoor growing season, which is just beginning.